I just don't know which is better, iPad or Kindle for. I mean, all right, okay. I know one of them suits some people more than others, and the other way around. But I don't know for me whether Kindle or iPad is. Well, I was going to say better, but I mean, right. I know better. It's a bit of a meaningless term, isn't it? I mean, they're both good for reading on. Neither of them works especially well as a car, but I would like to find out whether it's worth the money at having both or either. I'd like to know which is better for me, really. So let's you and me look into this, the differences between iPad, reading on iPad, and reading on Kindle. I suddenly realised actually that I'm assuming I will come up with a conclusion. And all right, maybe I'll find one's better, maybe I'll find they're identical for me. But at least you and I are both writers, which means we're both readers. So if you and I work together through what happens to matter to me, it could help you make a decision, even if it means your decision is obviously completely opposite to mine, whatever mine turns out to be. Hello, I'm William Gallagher, and this is 58 Keys, which, as always, is for writers like you and me who use and who write on Macs and iPhones and iPads. Do subscribe because, you know, there's so much to talk about. For the first time ever, I think, though, that includes talking about the Kindle versus the iPad, Kindle Paperwhite in this case. Now, actually, I'll tell you what, look, this is just you and me talking. I am, as we record this, trying to figure this out. For me, I did get a Kindle on the condition that I could try, and I will go through the differences, I think, for us as writers and readers. I'll go through the steps I went through with it for me, but let's just skip ahead. Shall we? Let's do the short version first. Yes, it turns out, after all these years, I really do like the Kindle Paperwhite very much. I'm not still using it, but I want to. I'll explain. But the overriding key thing for me was the typography. Kindle text is still not as good as, say, you know, Apple Books or even actually Kindle on iPad, but I think it is much improved from whenever I last looked into this. And that was the killer feature for me. I cannot bear how books used to look on Kindles. I mean, every word would irritate me. There's posters on the London Underground showing, and I just wince as I go past. And then I read on an iPad, and sometimes every word was so perfectly formed that it was just delicious on the eyes. It's still the case. The text on an iPad looks better to me than text on an actual hardware Kindle. But if this is a thing that stopped you like it stopped me, at least give it a go. Now, actually, specifically give this one, the Kindle Paperwhite, a go. It comes in the middle of the range of Kindles. There's a Kindle Oasis that's much more expensive, and oddly, though, it kind of looks physically awkward to me. It looks a bit of a pain to use, which is nice because it's more expensive. And there is a regular Kindle that's quite substantially cheaper, which of course, therefore, is tempting. But based on the ones I've seen, I still don't like how the text looks on those. Hopefully it's changing. Maybe I'm wrong. There is more though. I've told you I like this, but there are reasons to dislike the Kindle Paperwhite, especially if you're an iPad fan, if you're coming from the iPad as I am. But just for one example, my wife, Angela, she's been a Kindle user for about 4 years, and I've been solidly against it. I've been an iPad fan, and now I know she was right and I was wrong. She was definitely right, no question. But like I say, there are still things to dislike on Kindle, including one that actually I feel a little bit cheated over. I'll come to that. The thing is now, I've got one, or rather I had one. Actually, I've borrowed this back. I didn't return it to Amazon. I'm not going to. And equally, you will not prize my iPad from my fingers, not even for chocolate. So maybe, all right, maybe this was never really going to end up being a which one do you get. But now it's definitely a, since you most of the time have both, let's have this be a which one will you use when. So I've long had an iPad, and for however long that is, I've read Amazon Kindle ebooks on the iPad with the Amazon Kindle iPad ebook reader app. In fact, actually, I'm pretty sure the first ebook I ever read was on Kindle. I know it was definitely Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. I can see me on a holiday On my iPhone, actually, it flickers through the pages, just a few words per page. It was such a good, so we did. However long ago that was, since then I have built up certain prejudices, actually, certain biases for and against Kindle and for and against iPad. Specifically in favour of Kindle, well, there's this. I believed Kindles could be read in direct sunlight, where the glass on certainly most iPads can be too reflective. True. I understood that Kindles had weeks long battery life. I mean, the Kindle Paperwhite apparently claims 10 weeks of battery life. Compare that to the single day I typically get out of my iPad. I do use the iPad a lot, but a day versus 10 weeks. Also, by the way, definitely include this. Kindle is a great name. Never knock a great name. Hats off to whoever named these things. And specifically against the Kindle, though, there was this. iPads can do anything. I can be reading a book on my iPad one moment, watching a film, writing a script, running my business on the same iPad in the next moment. And actually right now, I'm showing this to you, this is recording the audio for that. You can't do that on a Kindle. Plus, by the way, iPads are really fast and Kindles are slow. I mean, just, in kind of moving around the Kindle, opening books, everyday use, Kindle equals slow. I was half wrong about that bit though. That was my bias, and truly still Kindle seemed shockingly slow to me coming from an iPad, except when you're actually reading a book. There used to be this flicker of a delay as you turned every page. I couldn't stand that at all. Very distracting, always threw me out the book. And now, turning the page, it's fine. Every few pages, I feel like I can detect that it takes just a tiny bit longer, like it's cached a few pages ahead and now has to go off to get more, maybe because I'm reading too quickly and it hasn't caught up. But even then, it's fine. If it weren't, I would have sent the Kindle back and I would have given up. The look of the text is crucial to me, and not being thrown out of the book for any reason, not being thrown out of the book because the next page is dragging so long to appear. Those turned out to be the key things for me. Seriously though, going through your Kindle library, just scrolling down the list of content, wow, it's slow. What are they doing? But then I suppose it means actually I hurry to get into a book and I stay there. I don't piddle about going back to the library or the store and looking at it like, there's a book, do that, read that. And for the same reason, it might be a good thing that I am forever forgetting how to turn the Kindle on or off. On the Paperwhite, the power switch is down here. So, I had to look for it again. It's on the bottom edge, and every single time, right now, I had to kind of blink to remember it when I want to switch it on. I find I also, coming from an iPad, I want to switch it off as well, but seemingly you don't do that with Kindles. It figures out for itself after a few minutes that you want it off, and it goes to sleep. And as I say, I have to keep having to remember that. When I first got the Kindle Paperwhite, there were other issues though. Setting up was odd. You're supposed to be able to just put your iPhone next to it, and it didn't work. It was more of a chore than it should be, that it was supposed to be. And as well as just having trouble finding my network, it kept updating its software. And I understand that, I like that, except this Kindle Paperwhite, it updated its software 3 times in the first half hour, and I can't fathom that at all. Also, look at the back of this. That is smudged to hell. And the thing is, the front, the little lip here where it says Kindle, that was already smudged before I even took it out the wrapping. It is a smudge magnet. I deeply, deeply dislike images on this Kindle Paperwhite. On the iPad, full color, high resolution, perfection. On the Kindle, it's like looking at a really cheap old newspaper in an archive. Again though, what this means is that I never dwell on the home or on the library page, where it's showing me book covers are supposed to be attractive. Just there's a book, get into it fast as possible, stay there, read. That's just me. I mean, that's obviously just me and my preferences. But there's one thing about the Kindle Paperwhite that I don't think is opinion. It's the thing I said I felt cheated by. It's the battery life. This is supposed to last 10 weeks, an incredible 10 weeks. My wife Angela has a Kindle Voyage from 4 years or so ago, and she says You can't actually, particularly remember how long the battery lasts each time, but it's a long time. It isn't for me. Not on the Kindle Paperwhite. Clearly, okay, obviously the battery life on anything depends on how much you use the device. So I can only assume that when they were testing this in the Kindle labs, the battery lasted 10 weeks because they didn't switch it on. In April 2022, I read, first month I had it, first complete month, I read 10 novels on this Kindle Paperwhite. It was great. I read and reread. I read all of Jane Austen, including rereading ones, a couple I hadn't tried before. It was utterly wonderful. And I did it for you, not for me, did it for you. I started to charge the Kindle up twice. Well, 3 times really. It was the first one I got it, then 2 weeks later, then about 2 weeks after that. Now, 2 weeks, that's gigantically better than an iPad's single day. But because it isn't close to 10, isn't close to the 10 I was promised, it's a bit disappointing. Kind of over-promised, under-delivered. I just said I read 10 novels on this Kindle Paperwhite. Not quite true. If I was somewhere where I didn't have the Kindle with me, well, I would read a chapter or two on my iPad if it was there, or on my iPhone if that was all that was around. And in both of those cases, iPad and iPhone, this was always true. I was immediately and forever conscious of just how much better the text looked on those devices compared to this Kindle. But I would always come back to the Kindle. I think partly because it's so light, ludicrously light. That was one factor. It was just kind of handy. It is single purpose. I pick it up to read a book. I don't do anything else on it. I can't do anything else on it. Well, all right. It turns out there is a web browser on Kindles, and I did not know that. Take a look though. Yeah, no, there isn't a web browser on Kindle. Kindle is for reading books and buying them, I suppose, as well. And despite the battery life, despite the screen and the typography not being as good on a Kindle as they are on an iPad, the sheer convenience of having, well, in this case, it was 10 novels in my pocket and nothing else. That was superb. I should say, I've read a script every day for years now. It's not like I don't read much, but I don't think I read enough. I haven't been reading enough. And what first this Kindle Paperwhite and then both my iPad and my iPhone, what they've kind of done in the last just few weeks really, is restore my reading habit. Even after the first couple of days, I felt the habit was sticking. It was going to stick again with the Kindle. Jane Austen, yes, all of hers. Also, a Stephen King novel that it turns out apparently I've been intending to read for over a decade, plus one Star Trek book. That was April. In May, I've read Kate Atkinson's Life After Life and Thomas Hardy's Far from the Madding Crowd. But while I read Hardy on Kindle, it was on the Kindle app on my iPad again. And I bought the Apple Books version of Atkinson's novel. So again, I read that on the iPad too. I haven't actually physically picked up this particular Kindle Paperwhite before now, talking to you, in about 10 days. But that's because I told you that my wife, Angela, she's been using Kindle Voyage for about 4 years. Well, it broke about 10 days ago, actually. I think I can fix it, or I think I can get it fixed. But for now, I've loaned her my Kindle Paperwhite. If I can't get hers fixed, I don't really know what I'll do. It's an expensive thing to replace for it, but I do know that now, having actually used a Kindle Paperwhite for a month and 10 novels or whatever it is, I kind of want to have one around. It is peculiar, isn't it? A regular criticism of the iPad is that it's for consuming content. Horrible phrase. Right? Rather than making anything, producing anything, creating or writing anything. People who say that about iPads should really try creating something on a Kindle, shouldn't they? The iPad, it's a jack of all trades, but actually I would also argue it's kind of a master of pretty much all of them. No question, the specific reading experience, it is better on an iPad, and it's a lot faster. I keep talking about it. It's not like I crave speed in opening books. I crave responsiveness. And with the Kindle, it can be so slow that when you tap a button, you start to suspect you haven't tapped it. So maybe you go off and you consult with a jury of your peers. Did I press it? Did I not? You conduct a nationwide phone-in poll, demand a recount afterwards, and then it finally does the thing it was supposed to when you thought you pressed the button. Except though when you're in the book and when you're reading, and then Kindle is fast enough. I mean, it's more than good enough now on the type side as well. So speed, type, responsiveness, and somehow overall, I actually think that makes it beat the iPad for reading. Well, there is also the weight, like I mentioned. The Kindle Paperwhite is so light that it's practically a joke, isn't it? I mean, I didn't think this was heavy. You sit in bed and it's... I keep saying Kindle Paperwhite, by the way. I should clarify. I compared a Kindle Paperwhite because the best advice I could find suggested that it was the one that would have the typography I could bear. I presume the more expensive one does. I hope the cheaper one does or will. But I compared the Paperwhite to an 11-inch iPad Pro on account of that's the iPad Pro I've got. I suppose it would have been fairer to compare the Kindle with a little iPad mini because they're more of a similar size. I suppose really, if you want to get down into the weeds with this, it would have been fair to compare each version of the Kindle with each version of the iPad. But we work with what we have or what we can get. And what I wanted to know was whether a Kindle of some form would be any use to me since I've got and since I so love iPads, and particularly my iPad Pro. That iPad Pro cost enough that I really hope I don't stop using it. The Kindle, let's just get that out of my head. The Kindle Paperwhite cost me £140, and in the States it's about $150, less than a quarter of the cost of the iPad Pro. Except, just to be thorough here, you can knock a tenner or $10 off those Kindle prices if you accept a version that includes adverts on the front screen. I think you've picked up on my subtle issues with images on this Kindle. You may have read between the lines there. I was never going to go for the ad-supported version. I mean, I'm not casual about spending a tenner that I don't have to, but I'm also not casual about using that Kindle for 10 novels a month and seeing ads every single time I pick the thing up. Kindle Paperwhite. It also comes in, it's called a signature edition, and it can also come with more storage. Both of these things, they add other features I don't think you need, and they also take the cost up into the 200s, which is where you also sort of meet up against this Kindle Oasis, ostensibly the top of the range luxury model, but also, like I say, fortunately, one that has this bizarre, ugly, wide bezel thing on it, just distractingly ugly. And when you go down, you can go down to £80 or about $70, again, including about a tenner to remove ads for the basic Kindle. There are also sales all the time, and at the moment, as I record this, it seems to be especially on the cheaper model of Kindle, but it varies a lot. And I really wasn't sure. I have many times recommended the iPad over that original Kindle, and then other Kindles as well, for reasons that actually I would still recommend it for. But now I get it, actually. I see the worth of a Kindle Paperwhite, and I was really enjoying it. I miss it, actually, even though I've only been shot of it for 10 days, and it's only temporary until I get it back. I'm looking forward to having it back. That's it for this edition, 58 Keys. Thank you very much for watching. Now take care of yourself, write more, and read more. I suppose we've got expensive devices to use up, and I'll see you soon.